Happy Sunday. Figured with all of the recent big shifts in AI policy, it'd be good to go ahead and help folks be a little bit more, we'll say, alert, not anxious, regarding just demystifying some of the recent policy changes that have come out. So on the right-hand side, we have here the memorandum for the head of executive departments and agencies from the Office Management and Budget regarding the first big government-wide policy on artificial intelligence, or just AI for short. And what this is significant on is that it requires, among other things, but really two main components. One is the appointment of a chief AI officer, and who that person will be is really going to be dependent on that agency. And two is by December 1st of this year, there's going to be a requirement to stop using any non-compliant AI systems. Now, what does non-compliant mean? Well, that's the, let's see, depending on how much you count, million, billion, or trillion-dollar question, right? So nobody wants to get the BAP on the hand from government on just trying to figure out how to use AI. It's best if there's just shared understanding across the board. So what we'll do is just go down briefly, page by page, and highlight some of the bigger pieces, and that way there's more of this shared understanding, because we're all just figuring this out together. On the left-hand side, this is where you can find the memorandum from. So whitehouse.gov/OMB/information for agencies/memoranda. And right here, this top one, 34 pages. And with this, it'll reference the executive order by President Biden. That can be found on the Federal Register. Executive Order for Safe, Secure, and Trustworthy Development and Use of Artificial Intelligence. It was issued on October 30th, 2023. And yeah, it goes for a while. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I was able to recently publish a letter to the editor from Clinical Orthopedics and Related Research that was on this specific executive order and really the timeline. So won't bore you with the details of it, but the important thing is that right here, so March 29th, 2024, Office of Management and Budget issues government-wide AI guidance, and boom, here we are. So this is that same memorandum. And honestly, the most important thing really out of this is the fact of that executive order ends up communicating on what it considers AI to be, what it considers an AI model, and really one of the largest thresholds for regulatory oversight being needed, or one of the really first ones to consider, right? So separating the hobbyist from the, we'll call it, person on the enterprise, or who's looking to really join this innovative push, is dual-use foundation models. And so that's really the crux of where the regulatory onus is on, is ensuring that these models that could be considered to either substantially lower the barrier of entry for non-experts to design, synthesize, acquire, or use chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons, or CBRN, enabling powerful offensive cyber operations through automated vulnerability discovery and exploitation against a wide range of potential targets and cyber attacks, or permitting the evasion of human control or oversight through means of deception or obfuscation. So really, that applies to a number of models, if not most, but really it's going to be most pressingly those models that are being implemented in domains that have a high chance of causing immediate harm to particularly vulnerable populations. So things like defense, things like healthcare, things like education, as we're already seeing it. And so that is really where the big press for not just guidelines, but also innovation to develop the right methods, the right standards that then become what is implemented across the board. It's effectively a race for who can come up with the best, safest, most energy-conscious way of using AI. If you find it, well, great. Everybody then is going to use it. So, without further ado, again, not going through in depth with everything, but just really hitting the high points here, because this is openly accessible to anybody who wants to go through it. So, right, and I suppose firstly is when we talk about who this applies to. So you have because they mentioned agencies. So really, this applies to about 24 agencies that span labor, education, health. It's the Chief Financial Officers Act of 1990 that tags all of these roughly 24 agencies. National Science Foundation, but really the bigger piece here is the fact of approximately 20% of the population in the U.S. Is employed directly, indirectly, on a contractual basis at least by the government, either state, regional, or federal. And so this will end up tapping into a very large part of the population right, what does the government do? Well, it interacts with people both in the government and outside of it. So even for folks who are not currently employed by the government, it will end up reaching really across the board. So with that being said, here we go. So this appointment of a chief AI officer within the 60 days of issuance of this memorandum, right? An executive order 14110, that is this guy over here. And so, right, very broadly, but most importantly is really going to be, I think, this reporting on what the AI use cases are. So there'll be effectively a list that's being collected from every agency. Here's all the different AI models that we're currently using, and that'll be updated on a regular basis, right? So it's really going to be a large proponent, or a large piece of the existence will be maintaining that and really acting as the ones who are guiding what that process looks like, because AI models are evolving at a very rapid pace. So we see this theme really of responsible innovation, and what that means. Perfect, right? There you go. So Chief Financial Officers Act, of really seeing the, for lack of a better term, double-sided sword that is AI, and wanting to harness the benefit while being cognizant of the risk. Right, so, but you're going to hear advancing responsibly, so innovating responsibly, and then managing risk. So, right, understanding that we can always say, oh, well, what about the danger? Well, there's going to be danger regardless. It's going to be incumbent upon the right people to develop the safe standards, because if left to their own devices and there is no guidance, there is no right way of doing things, well, that can go very badly very quickly. And so we look at, here's the scope, right? And again, there's a lot of terms here that are just very, for folks who haven't worked with governments or haven't seen this, there's a lot of terminology. Former intelligence officer here, so for me, this is it's really getting back on the horse a bit, but at the same time, we're all learning together, right? We are more than the sum of our parts, so this is about all of us sharing our knowledge. And so we see covered AI, right? It's really just going to be about regulating by creating standards, and that organization or that entity that creates those standards first, well, they're the ones that end up setting what the right answer looks like. Right, because they'll have tested it. They'll have red teamed it, they'll have blue teamed it, meaning that they'll test it for vulnerabilities, they'll test its defense, and ensure that it is equitable across the board. And so whoever these chief AI officers are, good luck to them, because that is it's a tough gig to say the least. A lot of scrutiny, a lot of power, but definitely a lot of scrutiny. And so, right, with that, they'll also be convening these governing bodies. And as far as who's going to end up making those up, well, that'll be up to each chief AI officer on how that looks. And really, again, so here, this compliance plan, that is going to be a huge piece of where really the standards that are being made, and no doubt they will likely be evolving, to say the least. And so, right, the CAIO, with coordinating of responsible officials, agencies' use of AI, promoting AI innovation, managing risk, and carrying out the agency responsibilities in relation to these two executive orders. And so again, that's going to say, that means they get to set what that process looks like. The Chief AI Officer for the Department of Education will look a little bit differently than the Chief AI Officer for the Department of Health and Human Services, then Defense, then, right, but it's going to be a lot of crosstalk, a lot of overlap, of course. Would not be surprised if there are agencies that work together saying, hey, we're all going to be part of this particular thing. And really, right, when we talk about promoting innovation, it's going to be giving those left and right limits. Well, again, we manage for the risk. And so, GS-15, that's a government rank or government contracting rank below what would be considered like a general flag officer. I think it's senior executive service, that's where flag officer or general equivalent. See, so, internal agency AI coordination, and, right, we'll have that board, how often they're meeting, who knows. I'm sure that will be very interesting to be able to see how that produces. And this is put here, if implemented responsibly, AI can improve operations and deliver efficiencies across the federal government. I 100% agree. Also, though, right, it's about understanding where the system goes wrong. I've seen plenty of AI systems be implemented and go very poorly on those fringe uses. And so, right, this is going to be taking action to strengthen AI enabling talent. So what does that actually mean? Does it mean you need to go out and learn to code? I mean, yes, but also no. It's going to be dependent on really, there's this principle referred to as the Pareto principle that I would encourage folks to consider of what is the 20%, whatever you want to do, to get you to the 80%. So do you need to go and learn the entirety of Python, one of the programming languages out there that most computer science folks learn in undergrad? Well, I mean, you could, but also most of the generative AI models are using a specific library or a specific part of Python that's really a very small subset. It's a library called PyTorch. It's open source, made by Meta. And so if you are really interested in learning to code specifically in this, and you hear somebody say, oh, you need to learn Python. It's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do in Python. Why not just focus on the stuff that's related to what you're looking at? So really it's, what do you want to do with AI? And then reverse engineer from that. Okay, I want to work with images because I'm an artistic person. Okay, there's a lot of diffusion models, right? It's the thing of stable diffusion. That specifically is looking at image-based AI. And so versus more so the transformers, which a lot of them are, they're getting better now, but a lot of them are more text-based, right? So think ChatGPT before it got all the different modalities. So it's really about what do you want to do in whatever the sector is, because it will touch every sector, and then figuring out, okay, what is the almost the, I don't want to say minimum, but like minimum you need to know to be able to get there. Because it's, yeah, there's a lot. it's all very doable, right? But it's just, where is the most bang for the buck, right? So infrastructure, data, cybersecurity, generative AI, talent, right? Because people say, oh, I got this certificate from this organization, and I got this thing from this, and it's like, okay, cool. What can you actually do? Like, are you able to train a model? Do you understand the difference between a 1 billion parameter model versus a 70 billion parameter model? And are you using CUDA from NVIDIA, or are you using a different sort of set? Or are you going to be quanti? Like there's just all these terms, all these things that a lot of folks are really catching up. NVIDIA is definitely, of course, right, got a lot of great stuff for training, certifications and the like, and Microsoft, a lot of great stuff. But really, it's right, it's just, this isn't what it's about. Really, again, identifying what you want to do. And if it's, well, I don't know where to start, it's like, well, what concerns you the most then, and trying to find out, okay, how legitimate of a concern is that? But really, Hugging Face is probably one of the best places to go to, just to see what's out there, see what the possibilities are. And actually, that's one of the, as I'm citing here, the Hugging Face OpenLM leaderboard. So there are about 500,000 open source models on Hugging Face. And now that there's this thing called the Merge Kit, you can combine any one of those models to do, right, whatever. So it can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different AI models merged together. So now the possibilities are, well, effectively endless. But right, it's also going to be, as part of that indexing process, it's going to be about sharing sharing the code, sharing the process, and also, right, all the reporting metrics for any model that could be considered to be malfeasance or very just bad if given out. So, here we go. So by December 1st, implementation of risk management practice and termination of non-compliant AI, right? So that's this year. So agencies must implement the minimum practices in Section 5C of this memorandum for safety impacting and rights impacting AI, or else stop using any AI in their operations that does not comply with the minimum practices consistent with the details and caveats. Typically when the government says something like stop, the implied thing in there is like bad things will occur to the entities that decide to just blow that off. It's very rare the government will say straight up stop. More like, oh, well, like, need to consider it? No, like, no more, no mas. So, right, that's really going to be the big consideration, is of how any organization is going to really identify what's that threshold. When are we gone off the rails? And who gets to make that call? And how do we go from just being like, oh no, everything's terrible, they're not anxious, and really it's up to each one of us to come together and say, all right, how can we, right, not an individual, but we come together and figure this out. So it's really safety impacting and rights impacting is what the language most consistently hits on. And what that can end up looking like, right, is just, can't think of anything that's the most vulnerable populations, of what we're going to be seeing as potential harm and risk with each time, and really doing that deep introspection. Because we're going to be looking at an AI impact here. We're going to be testing it for real world performance and context. Of course, independent evaluation, now that there's this AI Safety Institute that's being developed, that's definitely going to be a thing. Conduct ongoing monitoring, regularly evaluate the risks, mitigate emerging risks, ensure adequate human training and assessments. Again, I have no doubt, you're like, well, how are we going to do that? These are all very valid questions, right? And the fact is that this is going to occur, what government's doing its level best and is asking for help from, again, each and every person out there and saying, hey, like, here's what needs to happen. How do we get there? How do we get there? And so this is ultimately to be part of this conversation, is to drive what that's going to look like or just wait and say, all right, well, I guess I'm just not gonna. I just have to be told of how it's going to be impacting. So this is really, yes, it's a lot, but there's just great opportunity to everyone to come together and say, all right, let's figure this out together. Right, because we're going to be seeing this consult, incorporate feedback from the affected communities and the public. Right, so it's going to be constantly like, hey, this AI did this. Hey, this AI did that. And it's going to be very clear. You remember, right, like Google's Gemini, how well that ended up going. But again, it's you iterate, and they put it out there and they took it on the chin and said, you know what, we made a boo boo. We're going to work on it, just like Anthropic with their Claude 2. That was a little bit not so great, and right. But again, it's this process. It is so complex and it's so hard to really predict that it just you constantly put it out and bring it back, put it out and bring it back, and you iterate and iterate and iterate. Because that's like anything. That's how you learn anything, right? It's you just keep on trying it. So, and this is really important too, because this component of maintaining options to opt out for AI-enabled decisions. Because that's going to be that's a tough wicket, but it's most important that people feel that they know they get agency on when am I interacting with an AI. And they get to make that choice. And someone would say, oh, well, if they're going to be all over the place, then is it really a choice? Well, yes, it's understanding who is going to be building better models, and when a model is acting poorly, acting the fool, then report into that, and you feed into this organizational process that we're all working together. We all want to have our voices heard of, okay, this is good, this is not good. And all be actively part of that conversation versus just sitting there going, everything's terrible, the government doesn't know what they're doing. It's like, it's literally, hey, all hands, let's all build this future together. All right, so responsible procurement, assessing for environmental efficiency. Oh yeah, because it costs megawatts, gigawatts, an enormous amount of energy to run these models, to train them, and it's being able to figure that out and do it efficiently, like the good folks at Grok with a Q, with the right aligned model, or excuse me, not model, the right aligned hardware, like their tensor stream processor, language processing unit, and you have a lot of folks who are building better systems to be able to make sure that is occurring. And then we have purposes, performance, security, safety, impacting, and so listing out here of what this can be. Maintaining integrity of elections and voter filtration. Woo! Yeah, that is it's a sticky wicket. Kinetic force. Yeah. So again, it's really when we think about is it impacting safety, is it impacting rights, blocking, limiting speech, law enforcement contacts, risk assessments, biometrics, replicating person's likeness or voice without express consent, education context, cheating, plagiarism. Yeah, any educator who thinks that is using ChatGPT to detect plagiarism, please stop, because there is a non-zero chance that you are going to falsely accuse a student, and that power dynamic, it is not going to go well. And is that unfair? Yeah, 100%. But also, this is about really making good on the social contract of people want to learn, and now personalized information is accessible at their fingertips. And so if they're told something that's not correct, well, they can find out like that. So this is, again, and this is incumbent on learners as well, all right, this is not just you pumping out a bunch of things in ChatGPT and saying, oh yeah, this is all me. This is a co-pilot, this is your aid, but it's still incumbent upon you, right? We have enough poor publication coming out already. But yeah, so there is a large amount of things here. So here we have deadlines, boop, boop, boop. So designate chief AI officer, 60 days. Governance board, that'll be interesting to say the least. And then right here we have 180 days. This plan to achieve consistency with the memorandum for each agency, develop and release an agency strategy for moving barriers, and expanded AI use cases, releasing the code, the models, data assets as appropriate, right? Stop using any safety impact or rights. Yeah, that's going to be, whoo, buddy. Anybody who tries to sidestep that, no thank you. No sir, no ma'am. Then, right, but then it's also, if there's folks who think, hey, I'm not going to make that deadline, and you submit for a waiver or extension, but you got to think like, oh, I won't get caught. It's like, yeah, don't do that. Just don't do that. And it'll become very clear very quickly, right? To anybody who is trying to think, oh, this is this. It's like, you need to now show your cards, right? None of this, blinds or anything else. It's really about the models that are going out there, that are being put into the wild, that people can have a trusted repository to know, okay, this company actually is using this model. I can see the data set. I can see the report. It's being tracked by this agency. And so if that company or that AI model does something poorly, I know straight to the top, be like, hey, this occurred here. And, right, of course, it'll be logged of where it can end up seeing where things went wrong. And if things become trends, well, then that becomes, all right, we need to focus on here, we need to focus on here. So it's going to be more precise regulatory action versus just a broad brushstroke. So this is, before it gets too long, I just want to say that, and as a former intelligence officer and as a deep tech founder, it is incredibly important, I think, to me to see that we have this great promise here of making intelligence accessible for everybody. Anybody can learn anything, anytime, anywhere now. And there comes a responsibility with that too, but what a phenomenal opportunity here, where to have your own Jarvis, your own Edith, from Iron Man, for the tech nerds out there, your own aid to understand your health, the things that drive you, the things that motivate you, and to have a ground source of truth that can be from all the places and the things that you want to know. It's going to be very fast, and there's a lot, but this is the most exciting time to be alive. And we even see that there's not just with this, but we hear people, everybody from like the King of England talking about this is more important than fire, to President Biden and his administration with really putting this executive order in place, as well as all the attention that's been really brought with the partnership with all the, both particularly industry, but really across the board, right, with the National AI Research Resource and all these efforts of just really bringing in this next technological revolution. So it's incumbent upon really all of us, no matter what it's been a rough few years, to say the least, but that we come together on this. And I think maybe as a closing note, there's in the open source community, which is one of the things highlighted in this, there's this operating system called, it's from Linux, this open source, made by some dude way back in the day, but one of the versions of it's called Ubuntu, or Ubuntu? I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's from the Zulu, and it means together or humanity. And so that, right, because that's really what the decentralization, the democratization of intelligence can do, is it can bring us together. It can bridge gaps of misunderstanding and help us to be able to know each other better and ultimately spend less time staring at screens and more time connecting with people. So thank you very much. If you made it this far, it's probably not, but regardless, it's something this big, this demonstrably huge is really important. And you can even also find, let's see, pull up on here. Let's see. So I won't mess with that. I'll put something later where there's recently events that occurred at the White House where they actually talked about what this memo is going to look like and really highlighted the importance of it. Even though it sounds like this is going to be the future of AI for the government, really this is the future of AI that's going to impact everybody, and how really we as Americans are going to be, we're in a great position to really lead that charge.